Minecraft has been around for over a decade, and in that time, the game has grown and evolved with each new update. We've had players come and go, redstone masters, building experts, artists, inventors, and most importantly, noobs or new players. We all started this game for the first time ever at one point, and we all experienced the thrill of making our first tools and our first builds. And today, I want to focus on a request from a member of our community, which you can join today simply by clicking that subscribe button, joining us on our public Discord, and turning notifications on down below. And with all of that taken care of, let's kick off this mini build series with depth and detail. Starting out, I believe the best place to start is with the shape of your build. Understanding the details of the build in question is going to greatly influence how you include depth and detail to your build. You'll see we have two examples in front of us. The one on the left has a spacing of 3 blocks between our oak beams, our pillars, our skeleton of the structure, and the one on the right has a spacing of 5. This will change how you detail and add depth to your build. So understanding where you're starting from and knowing the full extent of the space your build will take will greatly increase your ability to improve the depth and detail for your builds. I wanted to take a brief moment to take a look at two types of walls here. On the right you can see we have a generic house style wall, and on the left you can see a generic castle style wall, both of which I have intentionally built to be flat. All of the blocks are on the same axis and they have an eerie unnaturalness to them. I really wanted to draw attention to this specifically to really emphasize why depth and detail is so important to making your builds come to life. Take a moment, look at these. I'm sure there's something in the back of your brain that's just screaming, destroy that, burn it with fire. Building on the shape of our build, no pun intended, I have composed an evolution of depth and detail in this one frame. So we'll go through these one at a time. Obviously, we know our shape, we know the distance between our beams. In this case, it is 3 blocks. Moving right along, we have the absolute worst case scenario. It is the flattest of flat, but here we are figuring out what blocks from our palette to use and combine to create our walls. Moving right along, we have added literally 1 layer of depth. And by adding just this 1 layer of depth here, pushing the cobblestone back 1 block, we've now created a structure that looks like this. Next in line of our chain of evolution, we have added a little bit of detail to the front, which has given us a 3rd line of depth to our build. And hopefully here's where you can start seeing how details and depth go hand in hand. They complement each other and they build on top of each other. Most builders, including myself, used to believe that these were separate concepts, but I don't think these are separate concepts anymore. The more detail I add to my builds, the better they tend to look and the more depth they appear to have, which leads me to believe that they belong in the same category. Moving right along, we are building on that idea of detail to create depth in our build. So here we've added stairs in place of some areas of the cobblestone, and we've added them into the center line we have created, and our final product looks something along the lines of this. We've created a space for a window, and that detail, the detail is really what's helping this depth come to life. We haven't added any more actual physical layers of depth, but by changing the detail in it, we have actually created new layers of depth. Building on the details for depth, you see we've added fence, gates, and trapdoors to our build. We haven't added any new lines of physical depth, but we have created depth out of detail. And one last example of building depth out of detail, we have actually replaced the bottom areas with a little flower pot and created a small pathway. Things that aren't inherently a part of your wall, but because these details add a layer of depth, we have made the wall more interesting without physically increasing the depth of the wall. This is really important and really good to know if you are in a build that's cramped for space. You can still create many layers of depth simply by adding detail to it. Next up, I have created 4 otherwise identical walls, but I've changed the detail, which includes the block type and the pattern and frequency in which I use walls, trapdoors, fences, stairs, etc. And we're going to work through these one at a time, and we'll just get a brief glimpse at these. Take these in, feel free to rewind and fast forward through this bit to take a look at each of these. These are otherwise identical walls, but with slight variations in the detail, and this creates different layers of depth and a different feel for your build altogether. You'll notice that by mix and matching some of the blocks, we're creating texture, another term we use when we build, and texture creates this really lovely layer of detail, and it can do it all within a single line of your build. So without creating any physical depth, simply texturing can create a huge amount of depth to your build without physically having any of it whatsoever. I have one final example of detail becoming depth. Here we have a classic castle wall. You'll notice this is 3 blocks thick. We have the cobble in the back, the stone in the center, and our crenellations in the front layer. This otherwise looks fine. This is a good looking wall. It has plenty of depth already, but you can add even more depth without actually physically adding any layers by adding detail. You'll recognize this fence design, this lighting design, from a previous video of mine. We have added the electric fence to the front of this, some decorations in the background in the form of plant life, and even banners to go with our city up top. We haven't physically added any new layers of depth, but we have created new depth within the build simply by adding new bits of detail. This is a very powerful method to increase the depth of your build without physically needing to add extra layers and take up more space than your build already has taken. This is very important for builds that are already in cramped spaces and can't afford to add any new physical layers to the build. I hope very much these examples and explanations have given you a better understanding of depth and detail and inspired you to build. If you would like to see more videos like this, have suggestions for future videos, or simply want to chat, click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, leave a comment down below, and join us on Discord, link in the description. My name is Wintertooth100, and I will see you in the next one.